Okay. Well, let's, right there, we see your plant. We can look it up for ourselves. Thank you. The recording has started because we're about to ask Barbara to begin her presentation. She has a video where she talks about plants, but Barbara, you can introduce that before you go to the video. Barbara has been around in Common Ground for a long time, so any of you who have a history with Common Ground will know her. She's done classes on botanical drawing and painting a day, and many plant and art connected presentations. She was part of this class last year, and in addition to introducing us to plants, showed us a way to take an image of yourself and turn it into a green person, which was a lot of fun. And so also Barbara, for many years, along with her husband, operated Alloway Creek Gardens, I think for 38 years, and closed in 2014. And Barbara continues to do plant illustrations and is featured occasionally in The Essential Herbal, which is a national herbal magazine. So that's her bona fides. And so Barbara, I'll turn this over to you, and you just take it away.
Oh, it was interesting to hear all of your comments about your plants. And I'm one of these people that never met a plant that I didn't like, or after a while, maybe I hated it. But the trick is to find out where it came from, where it originated from. And excuse me, I have a noisy dog here. And kind of try to simulate the same conditions where you plant it. Hydrangeas, I have them on the north side of my house, and they're blooming like they're crazy right now. But we've been going through a drought here, and we're hoping for some rain. We're always susceptible to the weather conditions, and you just learn as a gardener and a lover of nature that you kind of have to go with the flow. You wait a minute, it'll change. This is the way life is. Believe me, I've been around long enough to see that change. I guess we're ready to put, Ken Coons did this video. I just want to give him credit because I was really tired the day we did this. We had some family activity before that, and I was really tired of my feet. So I kind of stumbled around with plants, and he made a really good video. And there's some good reference material that should appear to all of you that are participating. I always like to list references of where I've got information. I'm not quite as modern with that app thing. I know some people say that you don't always get the right plant, but I have a lot of botanical botany books that I like to go to for reference. And of course, I get on the internet and Google things too. So I think we're ready for the video if you want to get it started. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Barbara Steele. I'm here for Plant Speak. Today we're going to go further back in history to the first peoples that lived in the area. Last year I showed an arrowhead and a spear point that we actually found in a cornfield years ago. This year I have some things to add to it. This is an axe head. You can see where the handle that was lashed onto the top. You can see the carving on the back of it, and it was used in the woods. The whole area was covered with trees, and we're going to talk about trees later. This is another very heavy stone that all of these stones were found in a farm field in Carroll County, and a student of my husband's gave him the collection. They didn't want them, and so we've had them a long time. But this is a very heavy stone, and it again has the same carving and a long point here. This little one here, it's rounded on the end and pointed here. So maybe it was used to pound leaves or whatever to make medicines or food. It's a very interesting little stone. And this one is sandstone. And again, it's kind of interesting. It's curved. Sometimes they picked up stones, and it feels good in your hand. You could use this to roll and cut and pound. I don't see any lines here where any kind of handle was added to it. But these are kind of interesting things to look at, and they came locally. There's some good articles in the Carroll County Historical Society I found online about the plethora of stone tools in the Carroll County countryside, where now you don't see it so much because they're not plowing fields much anymore. They're using no-till. But when you can see or walk by a stream, you might find some of these, and they're really treasures to have, and they're very, very old. There's a map that shows the various tribes that were in the areas of Maryland. And of course, there was no line there between Maryland and Pennsylvania. There was no Mason-Dixon line at that time. This was Captain John Smith's meetings with the native tribes. There were the Susquehannocks that were up toward Pennsylvania. Over on the eastern shore, we have the Pocomoke River, the Pocomoke Indians, the Piscataway, the Assateagues. It goes on, and it's kind of fun to look at the map and see the names. And there's an excellent article by the Historical Society of Carroll County on the Native American tools that you can find online. We're going to go on now and talk about some of the plants. And one of the first trees I want to talk about here is all over the area. It is the eastern red cedar tree. It's a pretty tree. I've got one in a pot. They grow all along hedgerows. Farmers really love them because they would nail their barbed wire to the tree, because cedar is a really good long-lived wood, and it was used a lot in production of cabins. But it was also a very good medicinal plant. It is really, we call it cedar, but it is really Juniperus virginiana. Whenever you see the name Virginiana on a botanical name, it is obviously a native plant. It was discovered in the Virginia province. It is known for its aromatic qualities. It smells delightful. It was used by the early settlers when they had Christmas trees, and even Pennsylvania Germans today use it that way. But the female has these berries on it. They would use the berries for all kinds of healing. You could make poultices with them. You could eat them. I want to say something about eating things that you find in the wild. You have to definitely know what you're looking for and be with an experienced person. And everything I'm going to say about medicinal uses is not to be taken literally today. I'm putting it in an historical context. But these berries, and the berries would be on the female cedar tree, and they're starting now. I went out the lane this morning and found these pretty berries here. They will develop and get larger and larger and be darker, but they were used in food. They flavored food with it, venison. They used it as for mouthwashes, sores, astringent qualities, even poultices. So it was a very well-known used plant material by the native peoples, and you'll see it all around old hedgerows, grows in dry areas, and you'll see it along fence rows. It is a juniper, though. That's what they call it. And there's other junipers. I even have a juniper down here that it's very pretty, but you don't want to eat these berries. This is a juniper from Japan, and it's used for bonsai. So it just shows you really need to know what you're looking for if you get interested in foraging and medicinal qualities. But if you like bonsai, it's a very pretty decorative plant. Just wanted to show you. It's another juniper. Okay, we're going to move on. The cedar tree. And we're going to bring up another tree that has very, very good medicinal qualities that the native people worked with. And it's called white pine. And you'll see it all around here. It's got long needles, the pine cones. They use this particularly if someone had a sore like a boil. They would get the pitch from the pine, the black pitch, and it would draw out a boil and help with the healing. They use the bark. A lot of books that you read about use of tree bark, they talk about using the inner bark having more medicinal qualities. We'll put the pine tree down here. The next one, it's very, very small out in the garden right now. It's a small shrub, but I brought a bottle out that it's one of my favorite over-the-counter things that you could get. It's a great astringent. It's even good if your eyes are sore that you put a little pad of it over, lie down and relax and have a pad of witch hazel. But don't get it in your eye. But witch hazel, a pretty plant to grow in the garden. You want, again, Hemamelis virginiana. It has little yellow flowers in the fall. There's a lot of fancy ones that have pretty flowers. But if you want the true native one that grows in the woods, some of these like to grow closer to the wetlands and all, you want the one that says virginiana behind it. Let's go to this plant over here. This is purple coneflower, and it's also called Echinacea angustifolia. It's got a gorgeous, beautiful, big purple daisy-like flower with a raised cone. They actually are finding out in modern pharmacology that it's good for the immune system. And this probably was more of a prairie plant that grew more in the Midwest, but it has been found in the area. There's different kinds now that have very pretty flowers, but this is the one that you want. It's Echinacea angustifolia. Sometimes they call it Echinacea purpurea, and it is a very attractive plant. It was used in teas if you had a cold. It was good for the immune system. It made you feel better. And they knew that this was a good plant to have. And it's a nice native plant for your garden. Let me put this over here. Let's see where we're going next. Okay. This is one of my favorite plants, and I've been trying to get a grove of it going, a whole group of it. It likes to grow. It kind of suckers up from the bottom and the roots. Elderberry, black elderberry. It's called Sambucus canadensis. That's another one of those words that indicates that it is a native plant, found in the province of the North or Canada. This is a young one that I have, and it's in this tube that has nice root growth on it. And it was used many ways. The native people knew, and in fact, if you're Italian, you know about this drink called Sambuca. That's made with elderberry. And my neighbor made some elderberry wine for me one day. It makes good jelly, but again, you want the one that says canadensis because it's the one that's edible, and it's best cooked or mashed up and made into a syrup. It's good on ice cream. It's good in muffins, but it's good cooked. There are other types of elderberry. They're kind of a little bit toxic, and so you want to make sure you have the canadensis for use and to grow in your garden. It's a beautiful plant to have. The flowers also they use for a liqueur called Saint Germain that's made, I think, in France somewhere. A lot of these plants also were very good as diuretics. People had that kind of problem. Teas helped their whole system. So elderberries were very good to use. Let me put this over here. Now, this one took a while for me to find, and I got it down outside of Chincoteague. It is a native mint. It's called Mentha arvenus. There's also Mentha canadensis. I have not found that yet. I found seeds for it. There's some native plant nurseries online that you can maybe find things. But it's the flowers are really, really fascinating. They whirl around the stem, and the leaves are opposite, and it has a square stem like your regular mint. I have regular mint in the garden, and right now it looks pretty bad because the little line bug has been eating on it. We just cut it back, and the second growth will be fine. The bug goes away. But this one is the one that would have been used by the native people, and it's got a nice, almost peppermint flavor to it. And so I've got it in the pot, but soon it's going to go in the ground. I love the flowers here, and I've seen little butterflies and pollinators on it. So a lot of these plants, since they're native, your native pollinators will come to them. But this is a native mint. Okay, I guess this is the next one. Yep. This is a fascinating plant, Eupatorium purpureum. It's called Joe Pye weed. It's known by Joe Pye. There's some now that they made it. It's usually about 4 foot high. So you plant it down the back of the fence or in a natural garden. It's got a beautiful kind of rosy purple flower on the head. Butterflies love it. It was also called gravel root to get rid of kidney stones. That's what they thought it did. It was, again, a diuretic. It's got kind of purple tinged leaves up here and pretty stems. They're purple. Now, I did some research trying to find out who Joe Pye was, and there's a story that he was a Mohican shaman, and he was also an entrepreneur and medicine man, and he evidently saved a group of white colonists from typhus. That's the story anyway, and it was published by the University of Illinois. But you see, they've really never documented it, but it always goes by Joe Pye, and it's called gravel root also. If you didn't run to the pharmacy and buy drugs, you had to try to find something that would work. That's Joe Pye. I wanted a sassafras tree in the worst kind of way, and I had a friend who had a garden show on Maryland Public TV bring me a small rooted tree. It is now a nice sized tree, and it's down by the log cabin. It goes back to my childhood days in Girl Scouts, and we went out in the woods and identified trees, and this is one that is really fun for kids to see. It has 3 different kinds of leaves, and we were told this is the daddy sassafras, and that has 3 lobes. There is a leaf that has like a mitten, 2 lobes, and then there's just a little single leaf like this, and that's the little baby. We actually dug the roots of sassafras, small young trees, because they sucker up around the mother tree. They come off the roots. They're rather difficult to transplant, and if you see them by the edge of the woods, by a creek or whatever, you'll usually see several of them that have grown up. We actually dug the roots, cleaned them, and chipped them down, poured hot water over them, and let them simmer in the water like you would a decoction, and made sassafras tea. We add a little sugar to it too to make it taste good. Nowadays they say don't do it because of the saffron being cancer producing. It killed a lot of rats somewhere. But you can buy sassafras. I found I had this in there, sassafras instant tea made with the extract of sassafras that is saffron free. The other use of sassafras, the people down in the south in Louisiana, down there, made filey, they ground up the leaves, and it's the thickener that's used in a lot of your Cajun cooking, your gumbo. It said you never want to add that while the water is boiling because it'll make it really thick and stringy. You have to let it kind of add it later as a thickener. And you can find that with spices somewhere. But the natives knew about this tree. It's good for your immune system. My grandparents made root beer, and I remember they used yeast in it, and sometimes it exploded. It was fun. But you can buy, this is a Pennsylvania German product, root beer, and they do use an extract of saffron-free sassafras roots. But it was good for the immune system. It was good for all kinds of diuretics. It was good, and everybody enjoys a root beer float. So go out and get yourself some root beer. Okay, we're going to walk around back and look at the yucca. Yucca is a it's a Mexican southwest type plant. It looks a lot like, kind of like the agave. It's not quite as nasty. It doesn't have as many points on the end, but it is a very attractive plant that a lot of people use in their gardens. When we first moved to Pennsylvania, I noticed yuccas being planted along the streets. It kind of takes over. It's a big plant, and it grows out from the center, and then right now it's putting the shoots up for the flowers. And the flowers were edible. People have eaten them. The roots have a saccharin in them, and saccharin is like a soapy ingredient that you could actually put in water and wash things. I know there's other plants like bouncing bet that has the same type of ingredient. So the yucca is one that has that, and the leaves and all the interesting leaves have like fibers in them that were used at one time for starting fires is one of the things. They would dry them, and they used it in poultices. So again, it had a lot of use. It mainly is more of a southwest plant, but it's very happy here, and in fact it takes over, and you have to kind of keep it under control. And our final one is white yarrow. It's got a little bud on here, but you've seen it. It's fern leaf. There was some debate as to whether this was a native or not, and now they're thinking, yes, it's been in this country. Like there's like the junipers I talked about are found in other countries, other varieties of them, and this has been found. Obviously, it was named Achillea millefolium. Millefolium means all this little fine feathery leaf. Achilleum means Achilles, remember Achilles, the Greek? It was named for him, and it was used in Grecian times to stop bleeding. Poultice made of it. They smashed it up and put it on and wrapped up, and it was used during the Grecian wars. But the Native Americans used it for the same thing. And it's a very pretty plant in the garden. There's various colors. There's the big yellow yarrows. This one will have a little white flower on it, and you can find this usually growing by the roadsides. But yarrow is another one that was used medicinally. Most of these, one of the best books that I have is a Peterson Field Guide of plants of this area of the north and central eastern states, and they document if it was used by the native peoples. We're going to show you a few little applications that the Native Americans would have used. They wouldn't have had a teapot. They would have had maybe a stone bowl and a campfire. Later on, they might have traded and got a big old cast iron pot. But we all know how to make tea. This little teapot I stuffed full of mint leaves, clean mint leaves, And basically here's a strainer. You put boiling water over it if you're making a tea, and you let it sit and steep for maybe 20 minutes. Some people have a tea cozy, but you strain it because who knows what you might get. You know, you don't want to have something in there it shouldn't be. And there's your mint tea. And some people like to add it to iced tea, or just drink it with a little bit of lemon, a little bit of honey, or a little bit of sugar. This one is when if you wanted something really strong. This is the bark of the red bud. There's the red bud tree over here I used last year. And you can see after I strained it, it's much darker. People do this also for dye plants, but we let this simmer for about a half an hour, and I always like to use an enamel pot rather than a metal pot for it. A friend of mine wrote this book, and I really enjoy it because she starts out in here with basically, a lot of the plants are not native, but she has a section in here about getting started and responsible wildcrafting. And the number one thing is to be absolutely certain in your plant's identification, which is really important. But she then goes on to tell you how to make an herbal tea, how to do different kinds of products. So it's a good little book, and there's a lot of books like that out there. The other thing, this is a tincture, and a tincture is herbs that have been soaked for a period of time in alcohol. And people use vodka, they use 70 proof alcohol. This happens to be holy basil, a tincture. So a tincture is another way of preserving the herbal product in alcohol. This is interesting. The cedar berries are the flavoring of gin. And if you look up the interesting history of gin, it goes back to the 13th century with the monks, and they were doing it as a medicinal product. They were not making gin for gin and tonic. They were making gin for healing. So again, the herbs will come out in an alcohol base like that. We always like to throw in a little art project, and this is fun. It can be even done with kids. Go out and collect some leaves of various sizes. You need, some paper that is good to paint on. This is watercolor paper, cheap pad, and I started out, put on the big maple leaf here, and I took my pencil and I went around the edges of it and put it down. Now the whole trick is you put, okay, I'm going to put this leaf, I think this is this leaf, yeah, something on top of that leaf. And here's one here. I'm trying to find it. Okay, this one went up here. But anyway, you start to put one leaf, that's going to be the leaf on in the back. And then I put another leaf over top of that. And I traced around that one, like that. And I erased some lines so I have the one leaf in front of the other leaf. And then I might have put a smaller leaf, I guess I had him underneath of that one, but I traced around that one and I erased it there so his little stem goes underneath that leaf. And up here, I have the leaf up here. Maybe that one's gone. And the leaf's up here, and this leaf is on top of that leaf. And so I went back and I looked at, I had erased the lines, and this is in the back, and this is kind of like how this is here. If you look, there's a leaf back here that's real dark. And this is the background. I just painted in a dark background later. But I determined, I picked out, it's kind of a value study, and I used the reds, the browns, and the oranges, and the yellows. And of course the yellows are going to be the leaves that are closest to you, and the darker colors like the reds here are in the very back. Oh, there's a dark brown back down here. And then the medium tones for here. and the later tones are on top. It's just kind of a fun, easy project. Kids can actually enjoy doing this. I've seen it done in middle schools. You might try it. Go out and take a walk and find some leaves that you think you'd like to play with. But that's a leaf study. And the other thing that you can do, and I have a book that I really recommend. It's really botanical drawing, which tells you about different kinds of leaves and about alternate leaves and composite leaves and different kinds of flowers. And it's very simple and very attractive to look at a book like this. There's a lot of books on the market. And what you might do is go out and find some flowers that you like. Here, this is a coneflower that I talked about before. And this is a photograph I took of it. But you might want to do a real up close and personal botanic illustration of a single flower or a single leaf or even the tree that it grows on. Whatever you do, have fun with it and bring it back to the class on Friday and we can all share. Thanks for coming today. Goodbye.
Thank you, Barbara. Anybody have comments or questions that you would like to share?
Several of our artists are taking Sasha's macro photography class, and Barb just talked about doing a close-up of a single blossom. There's a very famous 20th century artist whom we revere greatly. I went to all the museums when I was in the Southwest. I was actually in her house. We're talking about Georgia O'Keeffe. She was a gardener. She was a companion planter before anybody knew what that term was. I was on a tour and I was looking at rocks and plants and I saw this guy staring at me and he was a gardener. He was gardening there. I said, did you know George O'Keeffe? He said, I'm the third generation of my family that worked with her. Mm. And so he showed me some of her favorite plants and how she preserved them. She actually had a pantry where she had tools. She made goat's milk cheese. She made all kinds of things, but she was a lover of plants. So those of you doing macro photography, if you want to see how that can inspire a painter, look up the work of George O'Keeffe. Maybe that will give you an idea about composition when you're photographing plants close up.
Good. Anybody else?
I just wanted to say I really enjoyed that movie, Barbara. I really liked the practical way, like when you're describing these things, I'm less afraid of working with them because they just seem so friendly and there was so much great information about each one. It kind of really I could feel the history, the long centuries that people have worked with these plants.
I also wanted to add that was a really great assortment, and I really enjoyed watching the video and learning about the practicality of how plants work as medicines and all that stuff. I think it kind of sparked my curiosity because we have similar things like native plants and everything, but I never looked into the chemistry of how it actually works as medicine. So I might just do some research about certain things that I have used as medicines, kind of like how it works, how it helps with stomachache or how it helps with headache, certain things. So I think that was very interesting. Thank you so much.
Barbara, you reminded me, I have a witch hazel in my backyard and I planted it there for a very specific reason, because mine doesn't bloom in the fall, it blooms in February. And it's the first thing to bloom. in the winter. So I can look out my back and I just, keep looking for the day when that yellow and deep kind of orangey red center starts to blossom, because it means that the winter, will be over.
Yeah.
I think it also gave me some insight. So outdoor plants, like a lot of times I think of indoor plants and I think of, oh, I can move them. I can, if they need sun or things like that. But my parents actually have a rose bush. And now that I saw this video, I kind of thought about it and I was like, I bet you it's in the wrong spot because it struggles to grow. But in one area of the plant, because it's on the corner of the house, there are roses. So it just kind of made me think a little bit more about how intentional to be even in planting outdoor plants and things like that, not just indoor plants.
Elderberry, the Swiss people revere the elderberry. Over here, a lot of times they clean them out of hedgerows when they're taking out hedgerows. My friend Rosa and I would go collect the umbrels and dry them on a screen. And once they're dry, then you package them and wait for the winter cough. And then she would make a tea out of the elderflower that was good. And if you think about Ricola, that is an elderflower cough drop.
Mhm.
You can get the sugar-free kind too, but that's from an elderflower. And I'm very sad. I had one elder bush in my hedgerow and I had marked it with orange tape, plastic, so they wouldn't cut it down. They cut it down.
No respect.
None.
I want to reinforce what Barbara said about not eating the berries raw. Some people can get by with that, but a lot of people's body chemistry, it can make you really violently ill. I mean, it won't kill you, but I have a nephew who ate some once, and he said it was 6 weeks before his digestive system recovered from those raw elderberries. So they need to either be fermented or made into tea or cooked down into jam or something before you use them. Don't eat anything out of the woods unless you know what you're doing.
Well, wasn't it in Arsenic and Old Lace that the ladies used elderberry wine to poison their tenants?
Yes, but that was the arsenic. Elderberry wine is fine, but if you put arsenic in it, it
But
probably
they
is, that's not good.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
They
yes,
hid
you're
it
right.
in the elderberry wine.
Yeah, that was made elderberry famous.
There's
I
some
could-
good novels out
Anyone
there
else?
where the herbalist is kind of suspect of, when the murder occurs, he could look them
Right.
up. It's
Right.
kind of fun.
I could add to the yucca description. There's really good fibers in the yucca leaf. And you can scrape off the green with the knife and then get those fibers and twine them. You can just roll it on your leg and make string. And that was commonly done by gardeners down here in Virginia anyway, and mostly the enslaved people. And you can find samples at Montpelier of that string. And I think Jefferson's staff, they made twine for the grapevines using the yucca. So, and then I had always heard that the yucca was put in the center of the Pennsylvania German gardens, sort of like a tree of life kind of symbol. I'm not sure if you agree with that or not, but that's what I'd heard. I think at Landis Valley.
I heard the same over at Landis Valley
Mhm.
Museum. Mhm.
Yeah,
It's kind of,
and I
Well,
did
one of
try
the-
eating those flowers were really sour. I don't know how you're supposed to, I think you must have to stuff them and cook them, but they were pretty bitter raw. They were just, no,
Yeah.
don't want to do that again.
I had heard that they were cooked down like into a
Oh.
stew. I've never tried them, but
stir fry. Yeah.
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 They've got a
One
great
of
shape.
the uses. Mhm.
Yeah,
One of the
good
uses
stuff,
of
good
the
stuff.
of the yucca fiber by Native Americans was for bowstrings. It's a very stiff fiber. And, you know, when you double it or braid it, it makes a fine bowstring. And it was a favored bowstring because if it gets wet, it doesn't stretch or it loses its integrity. It's so heavy in silica. Makes a
Okay.
great cordage.
Question about that. Was that ever used for instruments at all, or just for bows for, you know, hunting?
Hunting bows is all I'm aware of. I'm at least in the Southeast, there were not stringed instruments in prehistoric times. There's at least no evidence for them.
Hmm.
Other
The
than
heavy-
mouth harp. Bows were often used. You know, a hunting bow or a specially made bow might be used as a mouth harp. So, you know, it would anchor it against your teeth and dong, 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 dong.
Yeah.
We'll have to
And-
talk to Cancun's about that because he
Yeah.
makes
I'm
incredible.
thinking catgut and
instruments.
things that have
Yeah.
to vibrate, you know, and break up the resonance of a wood. I'm not
Right.
sure that a thick rope like yucca would, you know, I think it's too thick.
Mhm,
Horsehair
probably.
is very thin, you know, that's, you know, just thinking about that. Things that can, I'm gonna look for a book I've got over here, see if it's anything in it.
Okay, anything, any other questions, or Pat, anything you want to finish up with?
She's getting a book.
Yeah, I got this, you know this book, Sun Circles in Human Hands?
Yes,
So I'm thinking maybe this would have something about strings for instruments or instruments, you
it
know.
might.
So
Part of the problem with archaeology is things like strings don't hang around to make themselves known.
also you've got it's really hard to research because, well, here's musical instruments, but I think I'm going to have to go bit by bit to find.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not that book is not really very user friendly. A lot of it's a great book, wonderful images and information, but it's
Yeah.
it was done by the Funderburk sisters, who were amateur
Full,
archaeologists and
full of pictures. So it's really
writers. Oh yeah,
nice.
it's a great book.
Yeah, great book.
Mhm.
But finding
Southeast.
stuff really hard to do.
Southeast culture. Well, okay, thank you so much, Barbara. That was just fascinating. And let's shift gears now, and I'm going to tie into something that Barbara said, and then go on in the rest of our time, give you a little more about Muskogee plants. Oh, I also, you know, today our topic is mats, cattail mats, and how they are used to present and to honor ceremonial objects. And I noticed that that Pat had a woven mat on her table that she was working on to treat all those plants and artifacts and medicines properly. The Muskogee welcome when people come to your house is legibus che, legibus, legibus. Legibus means y'all sit. So when visitors come, you welcome them and you ask them to sit. Now, nowadays, if people have a journey, they're likely to have ridden in an airplane or a train or a car, and they may be ready to stand up and walk around. But in the old days, people traveled on foot, and until horses arrived with the Spanish. And so when they got to your house, they were ready to sit down. So this exhortation to sit down, we still do that now. Come in, have a seat, rest a spell, take a load off, is that idea of welcoming and making people comfortable. And in our ceremonies, we do the same thing to these very important guests, visitors who have come to help us with our ceremonies. We want them to sit down and be comfortable. We want to honor them with a place of rest. You remember yesterday when I talked about beings, beings are not just human beings or living beings, but everything that has a form, a content, a place, a purpose, and all of those things have spirits. And so when we're doing ceremonies, the things that the power objects and the implements that we use, we welcome them as guests. Those ceremonial items and objects are stored in a special place, a medicine shed is what we would call it now. And inside are containers and baskets and boxes and wrappings that protect the items from being mishandled and protect the people who are using them from being overwhelmed by the power of those objects. So then when we take things from the medicine shed and bring them out, you don't just put them down on a bench or put them down on the ground. You make a place for them. At the center of our ceremonial circle, where we hold ceremonies, in the center is a little mound, usually made of sand or maybe some clay mixed to hold it together, maybe 3 feet wide and 6 inches tall. And that's the seat for the fire. That's the place of honor for the fire. The fire that burns in the center of the ceremonial circle is our most powerful and important ceremonial object of power. The fire connects to the sun. It represents the power of the sun that gives us energy for practically everything that we do. And the fire and the sun represent for us one above, Ofunga in the Muscogee language, who is the one who created us and maintains and watches over us and cares for us. So we don't worship the fire, we don't worship the sun, actually don't worship Creator either. We just recognize that Creator, Ofunga, one above, is our source and our keeper, one who cares for us and makes provision for us. And so the fire sits on the mound. We talk about the fire sitting on the mound or resting on the mound being a place of honor for the fire. So before the sacred fire is kindled, the mound is smoothed up and gotten into nice shape. White sand is placed on the mound, and then an image, a diagram is placed there that represents the power of the Muscogee place that we're in, and tobacco is put down, and then 4 logs pointing to the directions are placed, and then the fire is kindled, and the fire stays with us through. If we might have a long weekend, a Thursday through Sunday cycle of ceremonies, and that fire is fed and cared for and tended through the whole week, and is a central element of respect. So it's important to have a place for power to sit, a place for power to be, a place for power to rest, a place that honors power. And one of the ways that we do that is with cattail mats. Now, these are, I'm going to show you just 3. A friend of mine and I, a Muskogee friend, this last weekend, gathered cattail fronds. These are the leaves from cattails. We gathered them there in a barn drying now. You see the edge of the mat is twined together with cattail fronds that have been twisted around the ends, and then the ends are bent under and tucked in. If you do that neatly, it's not obvious, but if you had this in your hand, could look carefully, you would see that the fronds the edges are bound in. So the cattail mat, this is a long one, that would sit on a bench and support things that have been brought out to be used in ceremonies. So when these cattail fronds are dried, they'll be bundled together, and then when it's time to weave a mat, we'll put them in a tub and let them get wet and soft. They still hold their consistency, but they get soft enough that you can bend them and make those turns. We were gathering these for in September. We are having a medicine school, and part of the medicine school will be learning how to weave cattail mats. And of course, we'll talk about why we do them. As I've just said, one of the reasons is so that we honor and give things a place to sit. Now, the kind of things that will show up at ceremony that will sit on their cattail mat, I wanted to show you a few of these and talk about them. So here's our cattail mat, and on the mat we put the turtles. These are 2 box turtle shells. I'm going to try to tip this up so you can see them without me spilling them out and turning off my computer. There are 2 box turtles. There is a female box turtle, and the bottom of her shell is flat. And there's a male box turtle, and the bottom of his shell is just a bit concave to assist in the breeding process. And so in the first dance we do when we're beginning our boskita or busk ceremony is the turtle dance. And so the men will be in one line, and the lead man, see, these are rattles. They have pebbles in them. The men will be in one line, the women will be in the other line, and we dance the turtle dance. The turtle dance is the first dance because it recreates the creation story. And in the story of creation, a brief form of that, I'll just give you a simple form of creation story. When Creator made the world, it was all just water and darkness. And then Creator began to drop the animals down into the world, which was fine for the water animals, but not so good for animals that weren't equipped for water. And so they swam around asking for help. Creator by now had moved on to other things, other creations and other places and other times, and didn't hear this cry for help. But the turtle, Loja, did hear these other animals crying for help. And so the turtle made her shell available for the animals that needed to be out of the water to crawl up upon. And so the animals who eventually would come to live in land crawled up on turtle's shell and had a place to be. Now, there's much more to this story to explain how we finally get to Earth, but in many indigenous peoples identify turtle with this selfless act in helping to have a place to be. In fact, sometimes in the Americas, you'll hear indigenous people talk about the world as Turtle Island, so that the land is built upon the back of turtle. And so in the turtle dance, we go around and dance in and out toward the fire, and with spirals out into the four corners. And what you wind up with eventually is the the shape of a turtle, the round shell, and then legs in the corners, and then the head and tail of the turtle on the ends to the east and the west. So the turtles would be resting on this mat before it's time for the dance. They need to rest up, gather their strength, and focus their power to lead us into the dance. They are at the head of the line, and we follow them into the dance. And then after the dance, the turtles are put back on that mat. We honor them and thank them for helping us with our dance, and give them a chance to rest up. Now, another thing that would be on the mat would be usually it will be a wooden box like this that contains a power object. I'm going to show you in just a minute. This is lightning struck water oak. Lightning struck wood is especially powerful. You wouldn't use this for just anything. Lightning struck wood is especially desirable for use in ceremonial objects or containers for ceremonial objects because of the power that comes into the wood when the lightning strikes it. Lightning, which comes from the upper world, brings down that that power of Ofunga from the upper world, and of order and orderliness and rules and regulations, and it comes down through the middle world where we live, the world of beings, humans and others, and then it enters into the other world, the lower world, which is that world of chaos and creativity, a creative source of things. And so lightning struck wood is powerful because it joins the three worlds together. Now, inside the box is this flint blade, which is used in the first dance that we do on after the fire has been kindled. It's the ribbon dance, and the blade is carried. The ribbon dance is done by the women. The women who are co-creators, they're closest to creator because they are part of the life creation process. And they dance the first ceremonial dance of once the fire has come and joined with us. The women dance, and one of the women who is at the front of the line will carry this blade, and as she dances, she's chopping up all of the obstacles and contaminations and troubles and worries and fears and whatever. And so the women dance around the fire, and they cleanse the grounds and make it ready for Ofunga to come and be present with us, and for us to continue to do our other ceremonial activities. And so this box would be placed on the mat before the ribbon dance. And in fact, when the ribbon dance starts, the blade is carried over to the east where the women are gathered to dance, and it is placed on a piece of leather. We could use a cattail mat, but usually it's a piece of leather, and it's placed on the ground on this piece of leather. Again, the idea being you don't just drop a power object down and leave it. And then when the dance is done, it goes back into its box, goes into the medicine shed inside a big cedar chest where it rests and conserves and stores up its power. There's one other series of power objects I want to share with you. And then I'll tell you a story about one of them. Shell cups, conch shell cups, were a very important ceremonial object. They were made to use in the taking of medicine. Yopan holly is the only Native American plant that gives caffeine. The Yopan holly leaves are roasted and then boiled and made into a drink that we call ashi, which just means tea, and but was named by white people the black drink because it turns dark like coffee or dark tea, and the cup was used as a way of serving the drink. It was used as a social drink, just like have a cup of tea, have a cup of coffee, but in ceremony, it was used as a way of cleansing the body. And so you would take, these cups, some were much bigger than this. This would hold maybe 2 cups. Some would easily hold a quart. And this warm tea would be consumed in large quantities and then ejected to cleanse the body. So the Yopan holly are the people who saw this going on in Native societies, saw them vomiting up this tea, and so they named the Yopan holly Ilex, which is the holly species names, Ilex vomitoria. And a lot of people believed that it was emetic and it caused vomiting, but it doesn't. And you can drink it, and it's perfectly fine as a tea. The vomiting is a learned cultural behavior, and you'll still see Creek people, Muskogee people doing this out in Oklahoma. Now, this cup, the design on this cup is, you see there are 2 canoes, one on this side and one on this side. These symbols on the canoes represent 2 male, these are the male symbols, shell belts that would be worn around the waist by high status persons. And these are female symbols, not dresses, but probably fishtails that have been partially prepared for eating. These 2 male and 2 female figures are star people, some of the early teachers that came from the upper world down to give us teachings. These little squat mouths on the canoes are symbols of power. And on these 2 canoes are the big canoe and the little canoe in the sky, constellations. They circle the North Star. In fact, this little mica star here is the North Star. We call these constellations the Big Dipper and the Little Dipper. This would be the Little Dipper, and this would be the Big Dipper. The canoes are larger than the dippers and spread out into to cover more stars and bring more stars together. Right, the shell cups were decorated like this. In fact, this is a cup based on design that was found in the Spiro Mound in Oklahoma. All right, here's another cup. Now this cup, it has another constellation represented on it, the Great Bird, where we see in the west Orion, the stars of Orion. If you go on up above Orion and below Orion, Muskogee people saw a great bird. You can, if you look at Orion and go down below Orion a little further than we usually go, you can see one of the feet of the bird. It's very clear. And up high above the Orion, the if you know the Western constellations, Taurus the bull, the snout of Taurus the bull is the beak of the great bird in one of its forms. This is also based on designed from a Spiro shell cup, a Mississippian era design. But this cup, it has something more, not just the bird, but you see the bird is clutching in its claws a fish, and there's a little rat coming up the pole that they're sitting on. This is a story that comes to us out of the collections of stories from contact era Muskogee people. And so I thought I would tell you that story to kind of end us up today. I'll let the great bird stay there so you'll have an audio visual aid. Now, this story was likely told in traditional terms at night around the fire while the constellation was up above, and whoever was telling the story could point up to that image in the sky, and you could see where the great bird's still resting. Well, according to this story, when the Muskogee people were coming to this part of the world, the migration story brings them from what we call northern Mexico out through the Great Plains, Mississippi River Basin, across the Mississippi and into the southeast. But somewhere along that journey, they journey for a while, then they'd camp for a little while. They were at a place where they were resting up and deciding how to move along next. And in the village, there was this great big dead pine tree broken off up at the top. And it became the habit of this great, huge bird to come and light on the top of that dead pine tree snag. And the great bird would look around for a while, find somebody that looked yummy, fly down and grasp them in its claws and fly away. And that person would never be seen again. Well, of course, the men, being Muskogee warriors, fought this bird, but the bird was also a skilled warrior and had a magic bow. And in fact, you can see the image of that bow in this in the carving, with this part of the shoulders imitating the bow. The great bird had a magic bow, and it could fire arrows swiftly and with deadly accuracy. And the men, even though they fought the bird, found themselves outmaneuvered. And so the bird was just laying waste to the people. They decided that maybe they could bribe the bird off, so they went down to the river and caught a big fish to put on the top of the pole. And in fact, the person who made this shell cup design to begin with was so careful in reproducing the qualities of the fish that we can identify the fish. It's a red horse sucker. It's in the carp family, but it makes it a little better eating than carp does. But it can grow big, like, can be huge, 3 feet long or maybe more. So an agile young warrior climbed up, stuck the fish on top of the pole, and hoped that maybe the bird would eat the fish and leave them alone. And so the next time the bird came, it did stop, got the fish, ate the fish, and then caught a person and took the person away to eat, or perhaps to feed to its babies in the nest. When that didn't work, they decided maybe they would decoy the bird. So they got vines and moss and bark, and they made the model of a woman and put clothes on her, and some of the women sacrificed some of their hair so that they could make her a nice wig, and they prettied her up and they put her on the top of the pole, thinking, well, maybe the bird will take this one and not get a live person. So the bird came, did seize up the model of the woman and flew away, but didn't stay gone very long, came back, threw the tattered and battered woman down on the ground, and swooped down and got a person and flew away to eat them. Well, people were just despairing of what they might do, and they decided that their situation was hopeless. And as they were standing around moaning and groaning, that bark and vine woman's tattered body quivered, jumped. They all jumped back and started watching, and out of the body came a red rat. Big red rat, not the little house rat, but big red rat. And the red rat spoke to them and said, my brothers and sisters, I'm here to help you. Well, the first thing they said is, why do you say you're our brother? And the rat explained that it was the offspring of the great bird and the woman that they had made. And the rat said, I'm going to help you because my father has disrespected my mother. And since you are my kin people, I'm going to assist you in killing this great bird. And so what the rat said, I'll climb up on the pole, and when the bird comes, I'll sneak in and gnaw its bowstring so that when it tries to fire an arrow, the string will break, and then you can kill it. And that's what they did. They killed the great bird and burned its body, and they were no longer troubled by the great bird. Well, the children of the village, as you can imagine, for the next several weeks played killing the great bird every day. This is the most exciting thing that happened in their lives. And so they would go out around the tree and they would reenact this problem of the great bird, and then they would throw sticks and spears and stones at their imaginary great bird. And finally a child was injured by one of these stones or spears, and the mothers decided that they couldn't play that game anymore. It was too dangerous. Well, they were brokenhearted. But one of the grandmothers, grandmothers always a little more willing for their children to get scuffed and scraped, said, wait, I have an idea. And she went inside her house and came out in a little while with a little round ball about this big, and gave it to children and said, use this to throw. It had a stone in the middle, but it was wrapped with leather, and it contained deer hair so that it would not harm anyone when it hit them. And the ball, here's a picture of the ball, had a long tail woven onto it. And she said, this is so we will always remember the rat that saved us. This was beginning of the Muskogee ball game, which is the ancestor, along with other of these sorts of games, of lacrosse. Muskogee people still play the ball game with a little round ball that has the rat tails on it. Not every community puts the rat tail on it. Some have forgotten the debt we owe to the red rat. But we still play the ball game, and we still remember that the red rat saved us from the big bird. This is a little medicine spoon that's taken out of the inner whorl of the conch shell. So you can't waste that. It makes a nice little spoon for scooping up medicine. Well, at least that's what the old folks say. Now, anybody have any questions or comments? We've got a couple of minutes left.
Did the rat population ever get out of control?
I have never heard that was the case, and probably not, because Muskogee people did not waste a lot of food and stored their food in containers that were protected. There are many stories, though. We know that Muskogee people live with rats because there are many stories that involve rats, but they're always positive. So my guess is that Muskogee people had made peace with the rats and they got along just fine.
They are cute. Could be cute.
That was such an interesting story, and it's so similar to like dragon type stories.
Yes. Mhm.
Taking
Right.
the young woman and the people wondering what to do.
Right. Yep. Well, mythologists like Joseph Campbell taught us that all the stories go back to some common core. They're not many stories. They're all just told and retold in different contexts and situations. Well, I want to remind you to be thinking about some sort of art project, artwork that you might do, and maybe tomorrow, if any of you had some inspirations, we can talk about what thing you might be trying to create. If inspiration doesn't strike by then, hearing others in the class talk about what they might do should help with that. And one other thing I want you to think about to connect you to this theme of plants in ceremony is think about or see if you can find some evidence of how plants are used in ceremony. Almost any ceremonial tradition will have plants integrated. So just kind of stretch your mind and expand these ideas out of the Muskogee context. Think about where plants show up in other ceremonies. Well, I think that brings us to the end of our time. I'll hang around for a minute if anybody has questions or comments, but thank you. Again, we thank Barbara for her presentation today. And I think, Pat, you're up tomorrow. Is that right?
Right. Sure.
So we're looking forward to hearing from you tomorrow.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you all.
Thank you.
See you tomorrow.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.